Welcome to this edition of You Cannot Be Serious on learmedia.tv. And our email is info@learmedia.tv. Tell all your friends about us. On the show tonight, welcome Stephen Collins.
Hello.
Welcome Mary Honan.
Hi.
Welcome Brian HInchy.
Good evening, viewers, listeners, and fans.
And welcome Tony Brown.
Welcome, friends and listeners, and whatever else you want to say.
Welcome Chris Price.
Good evening, all friends and viewers and all that.
And the dapper Paraig Londra. Welcome.
Oh, yes.
Paraig
Oh,
Londra.
yes.
No.
You cannot be serious.
Oh, look at that handsome
Pat Barry
boy.
and
Where's he going with the dicky ball?
wherever
I'll-
you are.
I'll have 2
Yeah.
pints of Guinness, Mr. Landra, when you're ready.
He's like Jack Cruz.
I think he looks
Look good in this
lovely.
program.
now,
Padraig, you're
Yes.
fantastic. You're
He's
looking
bringing
brilliant.
a touch of class.
yes, he's
Okay.
raised.
We get a touch of a laugh.
Raised it. Now, we sent around a few
Yes.
list of topics, but before we start, I'm just saying before we started recording, there's been a disquieting story breaking. I was just reading it before we came on air about the potential to knock down Curragower House. Now, Tony Brown, I'll go to you first. You were in Curragower House not so long ago, were you?
That's a while now since I was in it. I
Yeah.
knew the owner of it. He was a retired bank manager, and he lived on his own. And then when he died, that was at his funeral actually. He died outside the home in Milford, and he was pushing on a bit now. He was Michael Corbett, but he sold it then, and the present people that have it now bought it, and they tried about, I suppose, must be 10 or 12 years ago, I'd say, to build apartments on the site, and there were big objections to it from the people in Prairie Park, which is just behind it.
Yeah.
But it's still it's gone dilapidated over the years, which is a shame really. It was allowed to go into the state it's in. It's a pity. But then again, nothing you can do because the corporation really don't. They're supposed to be listed buildings, but nobody seems to know what this listed buildings is or are. I've never seen a list. I get a list from Clare County Council and listed buildings in Clare, but I've never gotten one from Limerick Corporation.
Right.
Then it's a pity, you know, but a lot has got to do with this merger of city and county together, because there's a new mayor now elected last Monday, and he probably wouldn't even know where Curragower House is, you know, which is a pity because he's from Newcastle West. And it's a pity that our buildings have been allowed to go into disrepair.
Yeah.
But you're flogging a dead horse, really, because I've been to many a kind of a meeting and demonstration and buildings, and we've gotten nowhere really, because the people, they're not interested really, you know, the corporation, the councillors. I blame the councillors for it, but then they have no power. They actually have no power, believe it or not.
That's
The city
true.
manager, we don't have a city manager. We've a head of the CEO at the moment, and I tried to find out who appointed him, and I couldn't find out. There's a CEO there at the moment, and how he was elected, I do not know. He was just put into the position, as far as I can gather, by the last city manager, which is now city and county manager. So you're really flogging a dead horse. There's nobody.
Jobs for the boys. Jobs for the boys.
Well, it's a pity, you know. There's nobody, one person you can actually ring up at that house, because they'll just fob you off. It's a shame. But then people aren't interested either, I suppose, you know.
But,
But Tony, in the UK,
is there just before we fit Tony, before we go away from you, I thought there was an organisation that's publicly funded that looks at, like Antashka is a heritage,
Tashka different altogether.
but don't they look after our heritage?
Well, we could argue this now for a good 20 minutes.
That's one of their remits.
Well, it is, but Antashka, I've never been a member of Antashka, and I wouldn't join Antashka, although, believe it or not, I've given them two different talks on property. But I've never been a member of Antashka, because to me, this is my personal view on Antashka, there are people involved in that, and I don't know, I just get the feeling they're in it for their own dory, you know. Now, they mightn't be, but that's my impression of them, you know,
Right,
that
right.
I think over the years.
What are you going to say, Mary?
I'm just thinking that in places like the UK or in France, they put heavy emphasis on restoration and protecting listed buildings and semi-listed buildings. And, you know, I watch a lot of these grand designs and that. And there was an architect and his wife, they bought a castle. He'd always looked at this castle as a child growing up, and he said, one day I'll own it. And he bought it. It was in an awful condition. It was like it had no roof or anything. But the amount of hoops he had to go through, it took him a good 3 years of negotiations and them coming back to him and telling him it had to be done this way and it had to be done. It was practically a shell. There was parts of it had no walls and they were not letting him knock it. And one day, out of the blue, the one side of the whole building fell to the ground. And because that happened, he was then allowed to actually make some little bit of a change. But they were that strict, and he was saying, look, we're spending hundreds of thousands on this house, and they're not paying a penny, and they're telling us what we can and can't do with it. And I think that that's the way it should be. St. John's School, the beautiful St. John's School, was knocked in 1973, and they took the stone from it and they used it as backfill. They pretended they didn't, but they did. And they've built a school at the back of St. John's Cathedral that has fallen down, had to have the roof replaced 4 times since 1973. And the school that was there was 100 and something years old. Tony might know better about how old it was. But it would have lasted another 100 and something years.
I suppose what we're seeing is, should we pay more attention to our heritage? Someday we'll wake up and we won't have anything left.
All we'll have is flat prefab buildings.
Yeah. What do you think, Steve? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a shame that all those listed buildings, you know, are falling into disrepair, because, you know, it's part of Limerick's history and they should be kept up. But then you have the council coming along and saying that they don't have money to do that, you know.
Yeah, but they have money, as Pat says, to go on junkets.
Yes, they have money to go on junkets. They have money to go here, there and everywhere. If there's, we'll say given civic receptions to different people and all that, they have money for that, all right, but not to keep up repairs.
We're asking the question tonight as well, lads, ladies and lads. Are our secondary schools fit for purpose in our children's education? And why I picked out secondary schools, it's the next step to what you're going to do for the rest of your life in many cases. And I'm just making the point of the proposition here that it's all about points and how many points you get, Johnny and Mary, and how many points this and how many points that. It's a very narrow focus, because the majority of children in secondary school don't go to university. So therefore, why should the emphasis be on points, when there are many areas of education that is fine? I put 3 kids through secondary school. One of them was academically minded. He breezed through. The other 2 lads were grand, but they wanted to do things with their hands and practical. And they were frustrated, in my opinion. That's just a general thing. Mary, what do you think?
Oh, it's a difficult thing, because there are children who and students who are never going to want to go to college, or maybe aren't interested. There should be more subjects there that are more technically geared, like technical graphics. I know it's in a lot of schools, but it should be in all schools, or carpentry and subjects that are actually hands-on. But I do think the point system in this country, because there's so few places having, you know, I say that, but at the end of the day, this year now, there'll probably be more places given to Irish students than ever before, because they won't be able to take in the Americans and the Chinese and the Indians and those who can afford to come to the likes of wherever, any college in Ireland. So the chances for Irish students are higher that they're going to get what they want this year. But it is, I just think they should focus on Irish students in Irish colleges first.
Chris, what do you think?
Well, it's interesting what Mary says there, because I mean, as an academic herself, she would know what seems to be from the perception of what the universities are all about. They seem to cater more for the international students because they can charge them what they want.
Money.
In fact, it was only when the pandemic started that the spokesperson for the Irish University said that if no international students come next year, they would be at a 500 million loss.
Yeah.
Now, because he actually admitted that they can charge what they want to the international students, while the Irish student couldn't do that. So therefore, what are the Irish universities for, right? Now, the reason why we have a points race in our secondary schools is because what the universities demand.
Yeah.
It's not the secondary students' fault. It's not the secondary teachers or schools' fault. So the question Pat asked at the beginning was, are the secondary schools fit for purpose? Yes, they are. It's the universities that are not fit for purpose, because the point is, right, who is leading the demand, right? I'm going to be totally honest with you. When I went to LIT, as it is now, the School of Professional Studies, across from Bobby Burns. Probably spent more time in Bobby Burns than across the road. I don't remember. But the thing about it was, what I did for those 3 years in that school in O'Connell Street or O'Connell Avenue, I am not doing now 30 years later, right? So I'm asking my 15-year-old who's going into transition next year,
Yeah.
and he's after getting these grades in his junior cert, what do you want to do when you leave school? And he goes, I don't know, Dad. And I went, fine, you've time on your side. Okay? So I'm not going to have a massive points race with him. Now, he's a bright, very clever chap. But the point of the matter is this, is that I'm not going to put pressure.
Yeah.
So the pressure for the points race is coming from parents, because the parents are listening to what the universities are demanding. The universities don't care about the Irish students. That is my opinion. Why? Because when you see a spokesperson coming on when the pandemic started and says, we're going to be a loss of $500 million because we have no international students, that's the first thing he said. He did not say, do you know what, lads? There's going to be more places for the Irish students this year. Didn't even care about the Irish students, right? Now, I was playing golf the other day with a guy who's in marketing with LIT. I'm not going to mention his name, right? He told me straight out, right? He says the fear that the universities are going to have in the next year or two is this, and it has a big, it will compound SUSI, which is the grant thing.
Yeah.
Right? What he said to me was this: you're going to have people in courses that they are ill-equipped for.
Yeah, that's what's going to happen.
Right? And they're going to drop out over maybe 6 weeks, 6 months, 1 year. And then when it comes to getting the grant for another course, SUSI are going to say, sorry.
You did your degree.
You're out your door, right? And that's the biggest problem. The points race is, there's only one group of people to blame for the points race, and that is the universities.
Yeah.
And Paraig, I know some of your kids, Paraig, and I must say they're a credit to yourself and your wife. They really are, your family. And you know as well as I do, they do different things, and once they're happy, I suppose that's the main thing, really. I know Danielle is in catering college, is she?
They're both in there.
Michelle has just finished now. She's got her degree, and Danielle is a year and a half, 2 years younger than her, and she will be finished this time next year.
Oh,
at the same degree.
And
in college.
And they're happy doing what they want to do.
Yeah. The girl that's finished is home from England, and she's getting paid by the English government. She doesn't mind. The other girl has started back part-time in a hotel here in Limerick.
Yeah.
And my young man is doing his leaving next year. But they have brains to burn. I'm sure they were there somewhere in my head, but I was more of a hands-on kind of a guy. Like, I was never really academic. I went back to college again to study radio broadcasting there in 2012. I did a year's course and that, But I'm not really an academic as such. You know, more of a hands-on kind of a guy. You know.
Yeah.
That makes
And
sense.
very good. And Tony, what do you think what we're seeing? You have was it 2 or 3 kids gone through the system?
Two
2. And
went through it, yeah.
when they were going to secondary school, can you remember what they wanted to do, or did you leave them
No,
have
I
it?
did. They left it up to themselves.
Yeah, yeah,
And one of them wanted to do graphics, which she did. The other one couldn't care less. You know, she wasn't worried. She only went into Aer Lingus, and she found that handy, which I suppose it suited her anyway.
yeah.
But like that, I have grandchildren coming up now. I have, and one grandchild now is in 3rd year in the Irish school down off Ball's Bridge.
Yeah.
And but like that, I don't know what she's going to do. You know, that's her mother leaving it up to herself what she wants to do. You know, but then again, you get all. I remember going to school. All the upper class children all became doctors and accountants, and you know, I remember that well. I do. Whereas all the working class children all became plumbers and carpenters, and that still applies today. When you get very few now from working class areas that are going to school, going to college. Very, very. They'll say this fellow went and that fellow went, but when you work it out, very few. They're all going to be ended up as labourers and working. It's amazing the way it's still going on.
And
People try to deny it, but it is true.
Yeah,
I know them.
I know it's true in my generation because I'm an old fogey. But do you think that's still true today?
Oh, it is, definitely. I know them, Sean, in Limerick.
Mm.
People try to deny it or try to go upmarket and say, no, it doesn't. It does. I know them. I mean, I can tell you families, I can think of in my mind this minute where they're going to go when they'll be older. And it does apply. I went to school with 2 fellas that became doctors. Now, one of them was as thick as the cats out in the front of out there. And he became a doctor. Why? He was pushed into it by his parents. And a lot of it got years ago, that was the system. That you were pushing, if your parents had money to send you to university, they sent you. If you go back in all the I'm telling you, in Limerick, I know all the accountants in Limerick of firms, they all came from well-heeled families. I could name them all out for you. The same with all the doctors. Their fathers were doctors before them. And you can go right back in all the families in Limerick. I can go back in all the tradespeople in Limerick who became tradespeople and how they got into the jobs. It's well known in Limerick.
And Stephen, what do you think? Do you think that secondary school or college is geared up for a broad thing, or is it all a points race? The colleges demand, and hence the narrow focus in education.
Well, to be honest with you, I was just wondering that because of the point system that we have, is that actually geared towards Irish students, or the points being so high? Do they actually think that only a certain amount of Irish students are going to fill the places in the university, and then they'll fill the places from students from abroad? So I'm just wondering, is it like that? Because years ago, I knew very few lads who went to university. I didn't go to university straight off. I left it until later on to go to college to retrain as a programmer. But a lot of the lads that I knew went into trades. They got apprenticeships and went into trades. So I think it's geared more for foreign people, more for foreign students rather than Irish students, to be honest with you.
Yes, fair. And Brian, what about the question we're posing? Do you think that there's too much emphasis on the point system that's demanded by 3rd level?
You have to have a gauge. You have to have a gauge to tell you who's able to do what. I mean, when I was 18, the only points I knew anything about came out of a tap inside the pub. Do you know what I mean? That's the way we were. And you only went to university if your parents could afford to send you to university. And I can tell you, my parents couldn't afford to send us to university. So we just didn't go. But from that the question you're asking about the point system, we're 100 years old really as a republic. We're a very intelligent nation. Our school system works and works very well. You go into secondary school, you're taught in secondary school. In university, you learn if you want to learn. You go into university And those professors don't give a shite what grades you get. They will
That's
give
not
you the
entirely true.
They'll give you the casework, Mary. They'll give you the casework, and if you want to study it, you study it. And if
That's
you
not true.
don't, if you want to go into the Icon bar and get drunk 3 nights a week, you can do that. And a lot of them do that. But
A lot of them
the other
do.
point I'll make is about teenagers.
Yeah, that's another.
Can't tell teenagers what to do.
Yeah, that's another topic we were discussing
Yeah,
one
yeah.
night. What's the idea of a bar inside in the middle of university?
Exactly. 2 of them. There's 2 of them outside. Well, there was 2 of them.
Scandalous.
There was 2 bars outside. I don't know if there's
No, there's about 6 of them now.
is there?
Yeah.
Oh,
We
my
were
God.
out there, so they're
Yeah, look,
Yeah.
lads, but children, teenagers, they're starting to grow hair where they never had hair before, and you can't tell them anything. They know everything. So, going back to the question, the point system, in my opinion, is grand. If you want to get the points, you'll get them. If you don't, you won't.
You Cannot Be Serious is the program on learmedia.tv. I didn't expect any agreement, but I think there's some very topical points made there in that topic.
Oh,
good.
well done. Well done.
Very good.
Top of the class. Top of the class.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one point. And info@learmedia.tv
Cannot Be Serious.
is
With Pat Barry and friends. Wherever you are, we're here.
fair play to you, Paraig. Now,
Who said Pat Barry has friends?
we're
Himself.
Good question. Yeah.
it's a long-held dream of mine, but
One friend. Yeah. Okay.
we were asking the question about the origin of names, of your surname, and of course, if you didn't have time to look it up, there's no problem. But I'm going to start with Stephen. So Stephen, you'll have to move away from your picture a minute and let everybody have a look at the Collins family crest.
Stephen the Lionhearted.
Yeah, the Collins.
That's the Irish version of it, the O'Quillan quest.
Oh,
Very
Quillan.
good.
Yeah,
Quillan.
Quillan.
Yep. So, well, just the origin of my name. 3 things. In England, it could have been a double diminutive of Nicholas, or a patronymic surname meaning son of Colin. In Wales, it could have derived from Collen, Collen, which signifies a hazel grove. The French name Colline, Colline, means a hill, is another possible one. But in Ireland, the name is derived from Quilline, meaning darling, as applied to young animals like a pup or a hound. And the medieval Gaelic was Wa Quilline, most often pronounced as O'Quillan. And it's the 30th most common name in Ireland. And it's from southwest Cork, Limerick and Clare. And it's also very common in, for God's sake, Liberia,
Yes.
Australia and the USA.
So you'll be visiting Liberia soon, so you could change your surname to Stephen Darling.
I will in my tonsils.
Stephen Darling.
Liberia.
Oh, yeah. A Blackadder job.
But that's, I was very surprised now at the three different
There's a lot of Collinses in Limerick anyway.
oh yeah. It's Collins
Junior ministers and all that kind of thing.
but it's mainly southwest Cork.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of Collins. Of course, Michael Collins would be the famous son.
Michael Collins would be a famous one, yeah.
Would spring to mind of the Collinses.
And Phil Collins as well.
And Tony, what about no? There's a couple of Browns. There's a couple of Browns around, and they are very particular about their surname, I believe, are they?
Very browned off. That's what they are. The Browns, there's 2 variations of the spelling, believe it or not. But it is De Bruin. But like that, as Stephen was saying there, half these things are only made up. They can't prove some of the things, the origins of names.
Yeah.
A lot of them were attributed to Brian Boru, that he's supposed to have, there were so many of the O'Briens there, that you had Kennedy O'Brien and you had, there's other, I can't think of some of them now.
Smith O'Brien.
Well, yeah, they push names on them. That's supposed to be when surnames started to be used. but it's much older than that. It goes back to the old barons and being identified on the battlefield with coats of arms.
Yeah.
But the brown name is supposed to be one of the tribes of Galway, the 12 tribes of Galway, and which I can name, but I won't name them now. The 14 tribes, I should say, of Galway. They were merchants, really, but they're not Irish names, most of them are not, of the tribes of Galway. But the Browns are Normans, like Fitzgerald and lots of other families that came in with the Normans.
Yeah.
But, all the old Irish names have O or Mac, basically, before them. That's how you can identify. It's the only way of identifying them, with the letter O. O'Quillan, for example, there would have been an O in front of it. McNamara, McCarthy. Anyway, but the brown name is very common in Limerick and County Limerick and around Galway. And the two variations are BROWN, which usually is Church of Ireland, and BROWNE is Catholic. And that's how you distinguish between, when I'm doing research and names, if it has no E on it, that chances are it's Church of Ireland.
All right.
Yeah. The Earl of Kinmare now, who's buried down in Killarney, he's BROWNE because they were a Catholic family. They were able to survive under Cromwell and they kept their identity as Catholics. Like we're told that Cromwell killed everyone. He didn't. You know, a lot of Catholic families survived under Cromwell.
Right.
They got to the States, you know. But anyway, but brown name is very popular. But lots of names are just basically, it's the same name, but people like to be different and to spell it differently.
Yeah.
They try to make out they're a different family, which they're not.
Yeah, you mentioned there the 14 tribes of Galway. Would the name Rabbit be in one of them? Rabbits?
No. Some of the names have died out.
There's a
The
lot
first
of
one is Atty, A-T-H-Y, as in a tie, A-T-H-Y. The Atties are really gone. The Atties, the Browns, the Blakes, and the Bodkins. Blake is very common. Browns and the Bodkin name is kind of very slim now, you know.
Yeah.
You have the Deans and Darcys. Darcy is very common in Connemara now. You have fonts. The best way to see with the roundabout, whoever thought of making the roundabouts going into Galway, they're called after the 14 tribes. The 14 roundabouts in Galway. The fonts and the Frenches. French is very, with two F's, F-F-R-E-N-C-H.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, fonts and Frenches. Joyces. Kerwins.
Oh, a lot of Joyces there, yes.
Joyces and Kerwins. Lynches. Martins. Morris. Lord Killala now, he was Morris. He was the head of the Morris family.
You were asked about Brown.
Yeah, that's all he was asked about.
But after going into every other name, and
I just said where the Browns came from.
I thought you were going to tell me my one there for a minute.
We're just browned off now, so we are listening.
I said as a brown name, but anyway, that's how the brown name is very common anyway.
Yeah, and Mary, do you know anything about the Honans?
Well, the Irish surname Honan was in most instances an Anglicisation of the Irish Gaelic O'Honan. However, it's also thought to have derived from O'Huanin, sharing the same origin as Honin and O'Huan. The surname was found in the ancient territory of Thomond, Irish Tuamoon, literally North Thomond, the pre-Norman kingdom of Thomond, since divided between counties Limerick, Tipperary, and Clare. The early Honan history, well, it's, but the crest, that's the family crest for the Honan family crest.
That's nice.
We actually have it.
That big C came up in my one as well.
And the Latin for it is Nictimio, nex spurno, which is I neither fear nor despise. That's the coat of arms.
Yeah, and Brian, what about Hinchy?
Now, I always thought Hinchy was Clare, because my name in Irish is Hincha, and it's spelled small h, big I-N-S-E. And that's how Ennis is spelled in Irish. Yeah. Now, I found out today that I'm a biffo.
Dear me.
I am a feckin' biffo.
Brian Cowan's third removed cousin, that's all we need to know.
And how the Hinchy comes from Angus.
The beef or
Well, I tell you, this is getting better by the minute.
Are you saying you're a heifer?
I'm
A bullock?
I am a cow from Biffaland.
A bullock from Offaly.
But my family, I'm a toolmaker by trade. My son is a toolmaker, one of them. My father was a blacksmith. His father was a blacksmith. And his father's father was a blacksmith.
Oh,
so I would like to know how far the metal trade comes in the line. But that's what I found out today, that it's not Clare, it's Offaly, and it comes from Angus, Angus.
My God.
So you're related, you're a cow.
Would that be Scottish? So
Did I ever call you a cow, Mary Honan? Did I?
Huh?
Well, it brings the whole news meaning for the phrase "talking loud of bullocks." Well, I don't know. That's
Yeah.
And
You're
Chris,
talking about Mary or me?
and Chris,
No.
what about Price?
Price. Well, Boyo. Price is a Welsh name. No,
Tis.
Price is from Wales.
Do the tapping.
Huh? I'm Taff. I'm a bad swimmer. Son of Rees is what it means. Ap Rees is the Welsh name for it. Some people put a Y in it, like that.
PRYCE.
Yeah, like Jonathan Price, that cousin of mine who we disassociated from the family because he put a Y to make him sound more English. He's entitled to do that, but he's disassociated from the family. Yeah, so mostly people would be from Wales. How it ended up in Belfast, I have no idea. I haven't actually gone back that far.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
They're good swimmers.
They're good. They're bad swimmers because they couldn't go back to Wales. That's what happened. So they stuck on the island. Famous relatives of mine, yes, would be Alan Price, the English musician, songwriter, and actor. Yes, I always did like him.
Yeah,
Never heard of it.
I have. He was pretty good. There's
The Alan Price.
Yes, there is six people that claim to be more famous than me.
Really?
Believe it or not, one of them was a broadcaster on BBC. The other one was a Labour member, politician. Another guy played for Aston Villa, and another guy who claims to be me was American conservative Baptist pastor, theologian, and writer. And I'm going to sue him for defamation of my character. So no problem with that.
And then there's the fella that opened all those shops. Mr. Price.
Yes, I still have shares in him. There are more other famous cousins and relatives of mine would be, there was a Mick Price who was a snooker player.
Katie Price.
Vincent, well, no.
I
think she's got a Y in it, okay. I didn't actually think of her. Think of her. Vincent Price, Nick Price, the golfer.
Marion Price. Oh, Marion Price.
No, actually, here's the thing. No relation. Now, there's not many Prices in Belfast, but she is no relation. And there was I'm after looking at this guy here. He was William Herbert Price, Attorney General of Ontario in Canada in the 20s and 30s. So, yeah, the Price is right. We get about, there's not many of us, but we always do seem to leave our mark on the world.
God, and Paraig, you didn't Google anything about Londra?
I did actually. This is the first time I've actually seen this now.
Yes.
And I can read it out to you as it is.
Wait a minute, you're all reading these things. I'm the only one talking off the top
We're
of my
not
head.
historians. Shut up.
Joking me.
The Londra family name was found in the United States between 1840 and 1920. The most Londra families were found in the USA in 1920. In 1880, there was one Londra family living in Michigan. Now, one other interesting fact is that in 1940, mechanics was the top reported job for people in the USA. This is named Londra.
Oh, good.
I didn't know any of that. There you go.
No, because
And then you had the people that laundered the money. Do you know all those fellas?
or the launderers. That's the
Cleaned up.
definition of launderers.
Cleaned up,
Okay,
there you go.
that could be sister relation. But my own name is Deborah Barry. Deborah would be obviously not
Barry.
name.
The almonds.
Believe it or not, they're all around Cork. Now, I have to make one distinction, and no aspersion is cast on anybody that I know from Limerick or will know in the future from Limerick. But the Barrys of County Limerick belong to the old Irish family of O'Bahara, Beargha, and not the Anglo-Norman Barrys. I'm afraid if you're a Barry in Limerick, alas, you cannot be related to me, no matter how much you might think you are.
There's a relief.
Thanks be to God.
Thousands of people know.
There's some justice in the world.
There's
God.
a reason for
Are you
joy.
any relation to the wheelbarrows?
The Barrys were given the baronies by, what's his name? King John, I think it was, of Ballymore, Orrery, and Kinnalee.
Yeah.
And that's why you find them all around Cork and all that here in the Barrys. And of course, the Barrys settled first around Buddefant and all around Middleton and around Fota House.
Smith Barry's, yeah.
Yeah, and you have Barrymore Castle, of course. And then you have the famous John Barry, who was the founder of the
Navy
in Argentina.
Argentina, yeah.
Yeah. But
There's
the
only one famous Barry.
first around Buddefant, and Buddefant derived its name from the war cry of the Barry
Buatevant.
going into battle. Bua
Bushwa, wasn't it?
Buatevant.
So that's where the Barrys. That's all I know about the Barrys. I
So
never.
you're out and out Corky.
So we're here about nearly 900 years or thereabouts or something.
No,
like
Right.
any
Oh,
relation to
God.
Barry's tea?
I suppose if I went back far enough, I could find a connection because all the Barrys in Cork, we used to have a clan gathering. They still do, but they have them so far away now in places can't travel. But when they were held in Ireland for years and years, every year, I went to a good few of them. But it's interesting. They have a lot of interesting stories to tell. You were talking there, Tony, before we finish. Gareth de Bruyne, was he Brown?
He was. He's yeah. His
Well,
mother was one of the Guinnesses. But he got his father was Brown.
He passed away there.
Moore and Brown, yeah, from County Mayo. The Browns above Mayo.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Around Mayo.
It's amazing how many people called him Gareth when in actual fact he's Gareth.
But wasn't he in Lugalaw?
Why he was Lugalaw? What about it?
Wasn't he Brown?
That's him. He owned
That's him,
Lugalaw.
yeah.
Yeah, Lugalaw, yeah.
And a beautiful house. But he came from Mayo, from County Mayo. The title was there, Moore and Brown.
Oh, yeah.
And through the Guinnesses. But come here, I sent back tea bags to Barry's yesterday.
You did?
I did.
You take him in off the line first, no?
So they wanted me to send us on 8 or 9. I sent them on 4. I was sending on no 8 or 9. I maintained them a week. Send it back to the blender, I said.
Oh,
I know it is different.
You didn't leave
That's
it in the.
stupid.
You didn't leave it in the cup long enough.
No,
it's
I took
funny
it out of the thing and sent them back. I rang them first. She said send them back. She'll give
Well,
them
I'd
to
have
the
liked
blender.
them weak. I'd have liked the tea
Oh,
bags
no, I
weak.
like strong tea.
But when you buy, anyway, tea bags shouldn't be used. They're bad for the environment anyway.
Oh, we had
Because
this
there's plastic
before.
in
We had
those
this
things.
before.
You see,
And how many do you expect to get back off him?
And I'd expect a couple of 100 boxes anyway.
lads, I was actually in a coffee
You
shop.
could do with a couple of 100 boxes.
I was in a coffee shop the other day, and I saw 2 women staff arguing over how long to leave a tea bag in a cup,
Yeah.
right? And I saw this was getting out of hand. So I went to the manager and said to him, Jesus, what's all that about? It's been brewing for a while.
Yeah, you are. No, I always thought that
Go on anyway, Chris.
shaking that stirred, but we were there. I thought this would encourage people to look at their genealogy and their family names. It's very interesting anyway, in any case, and you'll always uncover something very new.
Yeah, I was delighted I did
In
it.
the program on learmedia.tv. Tell all your friends about us.
But that is a word that's always been pronounced incorrectly. People are calling it genealogy. It's genealogy, not genealogy.
Genealogy.
Yeah.
Like cod allergy.
I stand
more of it now.
corrected. I stand corrected. No, we always do a little thing. I forgot it for a while. On this day in history, film, music, or whatever takes your fancy. Now, on this day, I'll just start off one event, and we can talk about that event again if somebody has it on their list. But I think we shouldn't let it go because it was the largest battle ever fought on American soil on the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. In 1863 was the Battle of Gettysburg in the American Civil War, where rough estimates was said that 50,000 were killed or missing in action after that battle. And in the space of 5 minutes, I'm just looking at one statistic here I've written down here somewhere, and it's in my head. In the space of 5 minutes, the beginning of that battle, 82% of the combatants, men, in one regiment were wiped out in 5 minutes. Now you can imagine the battle itself, it must have been very close quarters because, you know, of the armaments they were using. So it was just horrific.
How many of them were generals?
Well, the generals,
None of them.
a lot of the generals and captains and brigadiers led from the front in a lot of those campaigns.
They did.
They did, no doubt about it. And there was a lot of Irish on both sides, both Confederate and the Union side. So that was the Tony we were talking about before.
Ask me first now this time, Pat Barry.
No, Brian.
Because if you don't ask me first, the rest of them are going to lose. They're going to take them all up.
No, Brian. We'll go to you, Brian, since on this day in history.
1986. Does any of you know a fella called Greg Carroll?
Who?
Greg Carroll.
No. Did he make cigarettes?
No. Do you know what he is? He died on this day. He was killed off his motorbike while he was on an errand for Bono.
He'd be egregious. You go for him.
He was part of the U2 crew, and he was sent maybe to get a packet of Barry's tea or something like that
probably.
by Bono, and he was killed off his motorbike on this day in 1986. Now put that down in your calendar for next year.
Yeah, I know what he went for. He went for high heel shoes for Bono.
You can all have the rest of them now.
Mary, did you find out anything interesting about this day in history, film, or music?
Well, on this day in 1775, George Washington takes command of the Continental Army.
That's tomorrow.
The American War of Independence in 1775. And Stephen, did the Collinses lead any battle this day in Gettysburg, do you know?
Not that I'm aware of, anyway. Not that I'm aware of, but 1982, that mad sod, Ozzy Osbourne, he bit the head off a live bat on stage in Des Moines, in Iowa.
Now we know where the coronavirus started.
Yeah. And Jim Morrison of The Doors died in 1971. And Andy Williams, the Andy Williams Show, aired for the first time on ABC in 1958. This day in 1958.
That far back, I thought it was the 60s.
And 1884, the Dow Jones published its first stock index.
In 1884, and they're dealing in phantom money since. Tony, we were talking before we came on air about...
See, one of the Joneses, I wonder, from Weston. The Dow Jones for
Jones. Dow, diddly-eye. But the Battle of Gettysburg.
Oh, that's terrible.
And the slaughter, there was generations of young men wiped out. There was whole towns and villages destroyed.
I'm not looking up anything now. I'm talking off the top of my head.
That's all right.
That's your interest.
Yeah, look, you're telling us that.
There were about 8 generals killed in that, the commanders on the Union side, and there were many from the Confederates. It was a terrible battle to us, but there were 40 to 50,000 anyway killed in that, and but like it was a kind of a turning point as well, because there were a few mistakes made by Lee. Well, not Lee really. One of his troops, one of his commanders, I remember, made a mistake, but it was a terrible thing to happen. The amount of people that were massacred to that, as you were saying, they were very close. They were together with the rifles that they had.
Yeah.
So the amount of bodies that were there lying in the place, luckily they preserved the whole site over there. You can go and visit the sites of the battles, of various battles. But Gettysburg was one of the worst ever. The casualties, as opposed to some other battles that I know of. I have 5 DVDs belong to somebody that you gave me.
Somebody gave you a loan of 5 DVDs.
No, we don't want. We're not talking about those kind of movies here tonight. Okay.
Which I didn't look at. I didn't look at yet, you know.
Yeah.
But I know from Ken Burns' series and the war. What you call it? Not the War of Independence. What you call it? Civil War, the American Civil War.
Yeah.
That was in 1863, I think. But the war went on for a full 2 years after Gettysburg.
It did, but the southern states never ever recovered from the battle again.
Not really, no. But still, they couldn't, because he went up too far. He did. He was on his way to New York. He was. What's his name was Lee.
Was that near the beginning or the end of the war?
He what?
Was that at the beginning or the end of the war?
What, halfway through it?
Well,
1861 to 65.
January or February 18.
General Lee was a brilliant commander. He was.
Right,
What you say about him? And I mean, the biggest indignity they did to him was to take his house and turn it into a cemetery at Arlington. I mean, that was a terrible thing they did to him. Turn it into a graveyard at Arlington. And Lee was a fantastic commander for a man that had so little troops compared to the North. And he had, like, I mean, the uniforms were made in Limerick. All his uniforms were made here in Limerick clothing.
Well, he has a lot of troops under him now at the moment, isn't he?
Well, chalk it down. He had, but Peter Tate ran 2 blockheads at Savannah getting in with the uniforms. He had 3 ships he had gone over with uniforms. He sold them boots as well, but the boots didn't last long. They were useless, the boots that they got. But he supplied all the uniforms, and he was able to employ Limerick people making uniforms for the Confederates. It set him into business, really. But it was a terrible battle. It was the Battle of Gettysburg. Bigger than all the other battles you hear of. Shiloh, for example, you know, Bull Run, Antietam. All them other battles were nothing compared to Gettysburg, the slaughter of Gettysburg.
Yeah, and before Gettysburg, Tony, the southern states, the Confederacy had 2 sizable victories on the run-up to, so that's what gave them.
One was in Bull Run, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Bull Run.
Yeah.
Bull Run was the walk over the northern.
Stonewall Jackson made his name there, didn't he?
Who?
Stonewall Jackson.
Stonewall Jackson, yeah. But there were lots of generals that we've had those afterwards, you know, that became well known. Grant, for example, Ulysses Grant, he was involved with
And were
the
the
Union
Indians
forces.
or the Indians slaughtered before or after that?
After.
After it.
Because they were still on the East Coast, really, all the states. I mean, you states out there like Texas, and you had all the other states, Idaho and all them, they weren't involved at all. They were run by the Spanish anyway. All the western states were run by the Spanish. That's how you have Los Angeles, and you have all these Spanish names, Albuquerque, and all these places that the Spanish control.
San Francisco.
San Antonio. Yeah. Now, Chris, on this day in history and film or music, what little gem did you stir up for us?
Okay, well, in music, today was the day that Jim Morrison of the Doors died.
Yeah.
Right?
Of a suspected heart attack.
In Paris.
Yeah.
And that would be what happened that day.
He's
that
buried there, is he?
Sorry, he buried in Paris, as far as I know.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, is that the fella that was found dead in the bath?
No, that was
Jim Morrison found dead in the bath.
Jim Morrison. His father had a pub out in Barry Simon.
Yeah, he was found dead in the bath in Paris.
That was the music thing, but I'll give you one more nugget, and it affected me, was because at this day, 50 years ago, the falls curfew in Belfast started. And I must have been, I'm trying to think, 16. I was only 19 days old. And my dad we were living just in a place called Abyssinia Street, not far away from the Royal Victoria Hospital, just off the Falls Road.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of CS gas. This is what I've been told. I didn't think I knew it. This
1970 you're talking about.
1970, 50 years ago.
Yeah,
and basically what happened was that there was a riot going on, and then the British commander decided, that's it, curfew. And there was a lot of CS gas. And basically what happened to me was I was overcome with the CS gas fumes. And my dad was trying to bring me out, and the British soldier said, what are you doing out? I says, the child is sick. I says, get back in. He says, no, he's sick. So he took one look and he says, come on. And apparently there was an escort from the British Army to the Royal Victoria Hospital where I was getting treatment. Subsequently, I've been asthmatic ever since from the CS gas. That's what they put it down to because it was pretty
Is there
bad.
a
at that
case
stage.
there to be answered?
I think it's probably gone past the statute of limitations at this stage, 50
Mhm.
years on. But, you know, that's what happens. But that was just when you're looking at what happened this day, something like that, when you wouldn't even know, you were like, what, 19, 20 days. And it was probably after that my mother, who was originally from Cork, said, right, it's either we're going to London or that's it. And that's what happened. We went to London not too long after that because she just felt that she just couldn't stick it there anymore because of what was going on. Because she just went from basically London, free spirit, into technically a war zone. So she just had enough of it.
And on this day in 1928, John Logie Baird demonstrated the first colour television in London in 1928. Imagine that. I didn't think it was that far back. Double Indemnity, all you old film buffs, was released on this day in 1944. The wonderful Fred McMurray and Barbara Stanwyck, wasn't it?
That's Barbara Stanwyck, yeah.
Double Indemnity. If you have never seen it,
Watch
go
it.
into Netflix and get it up because it's a fabulous film, lads. It doesn't drop at all. Hold your attention right through, in my opinion. This is in my opinion.
All I remember him in was a shaggy dog. Do you remember Fred McMurray?
Oh, I do, yeah.
He became a dog overnight.
That's right. Yeah, that was a good. That's a good film. I'd forgotten that one.
Shaggy dog. I saw that above the City Theatre.
Yeah. And do you know the funny thing? Not funny, but the Wild Bunch, which was led by Butch Cassidy. You know the film they made Butch Cassidy and Son and Kid, but the Wild Bunch led by Butch Cassidy. I didn't realise it. On this day in 1901, they committed their last robbery in Montana, and what did they get? $65,000. Think about it in 1901.
That was a huge amount of money.
That was a massive
amount of money.
haul. They hightailed it down to South America after that, apparently. Idaho became the 43rd state of the United States in this day in 1890. Anyway, anyone else come up with any other gems?
No. 1976, Brian Wilson performs with the Beach Boys after 12 years apart.
Oh, he withdrew, with his problems, emotional problems and. But he was an absolute musical genius. There's no doubt.
Still alive, no? The rest of them are dead.
He is. He's nearly 80 now. I say must be 80 years of age, Brian Wilson.
1966, Frank Sinatra was #1 with Strangers in the Night.
Strangers in the night, doobie doobie doo.
Scooby Dooby Doo.
Doobie doobie doo. Ilya Beyond Board beat Ilya Nastasi.
Yeah, I was going to say it.
In 1976 in Wimbledon, 6-4, 6-2, 9-7, the beginning of his 5 in a row, lads. That was astonishing for any tennis player.
I thought it was 37, 27, 36.
5 in a row.
That Bjorn Borg.
Yeah.
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 Pat, on this day 98 years ago, the 30th of June, well, no, that's the 30th of June, but it's interesting to actually mention it. A century's worth of Irish documentation was lost when the Public Record Office in the Four Courts was blown up in battle between pro and anti-treaty forces.
I remember that.
Times noted that the precious records would have been so useful. But I remember actually hearing on Tommy Tiernan's show, the woman who ran the census office up in Dublin, she was on it. And she was simply spectacular. And she was talking about how narrow-minded they really were. They were down, they used to go down to Bewley's and they used to go down to the, for coffee and, something at 11 and the stroll on Stephen's Green. That's where that song came from. But she said that they were warned on several occasions to be very careful of the valuable documents that were inside in the GPO, and they took no notice. And she said there's countless records, census records and everything that will never be found because they just didn't value. They just went in and they just ransacked.
Mary, if you were the reason for atrocities, what would be the best thing you'd like to do? Get rid of
Pardon?
all the records of it.
I suppose so, yeah. And on this day in 2012, Andy Griffith died at the age of 86. Remember Matlock? That
Oh, great show.
long-running
Oh,
series?
Matlock, great, very
And
good, yeah.
before that, the Andy Griffith show was
Matlock, that's in England, Matlock. What are
Matlock.
you talking about? I missed
Matlock.
that.
Andy Griffith, the American actor who died this
The
day
lawyer. He was the
at
lawyer.
the age of 86.
Good
But
man.
Matlock was very good.
He used to wear the white suit.
The Southern man. He was from the Southern state.
Andy Griffiths, yeah, he
Yeah,
used to wear the
yeah.
white suit in court.
I
No
suppose
guilty.
my two favorite people on television series that time was Matlock and what was the name of the other fella?
Columbo.
Columbo.
Columbo was a legend.
Columbo was brilliant. I just love his.
They all read your mind there.
Yeah, your man would think that he'd have Columbo flummox, and he'd turn around at the door as he's going to go. Just one
Yeah, one more question. Yeah.
with a little notebook, and your man knew the game was up, but he couldn't prove. Oh, he got it. But that was anyway, lads. Even to Tony, to Chris, to Paraig, to Brian and Mary, and for myself till we meet again. Good night and good luck.
You cannot be serious.
No, no, well, yeah.
Pat Barry and
Dicky
friends,
Buck.
wherever you are, we're here.
Have you those points ready yet?